Right. We have a lot of content to cover today, so we will go ahead and get started. But thank you everyone for joining us. We're excited that we have folks joining from all over the country. This is our webinar, Your Membership, Your Benefits, a closer look at NCRC membership. A couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. Our NCRC Code of Conduct applies to all of our gatherings, including today's, and we're just working on getting our slides up, but all of our attendees are muted, but we encourage you to share your questions in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We will answer as many questions as we can during the webinar. We'll pause a few times for Q&A, but if we don't get to your question during the webinar, we'll make sure to follow up with you afterwards. I'm Maurice Fernando. I'm NCRC's Membership Engagement Manager, and I'm joined today by two of my colleagues from the membership team, Maggie and Katie, as well as two of our members, Bethany Sanchez and Cornell Cruz Jr., who are both going to share about their experience being NCRC members. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Maggie to introduce herself.
Thanks, Maurice. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Mishlevitz. I'm the Membership Engagement Specialist at NCRC. So what that means, if you have any questions about your current membership benefits, how to get connected with folks at NCRC, about the renewal process or how to join membership, you can reach out to me and I'll make sure that you're connected to resources or to the correct person. And my contact info will be shared at the end as well. And now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Katie Roundtree.
Yeah. Hi there. Thanks, Maggie. Like Maggie said, I'm Katie Roundtree. I am NCRC's Membership and Events Director. I've been with NCRC since 2011. And yeah, it's just really good to see a lot of familiar names and organizations and a lot of new folks in the chat here. So welcome to all of you. You should be seeing a poll, an opportunity to tell us what type of organization you work for. And you'll notice that one of the really exciting things about NCRC is that we work with a huge variety of different organizations. And in fact, we, just for simplicity's sake, we had to cut off someplace, but you know, I frequently tell folks that, you know, if your organization cares about economic justice in some way, shape, or form, then really you should probably be finding a way to collaborate with us and talk with us. So yeah, just really good to have such a big tent of folks that all want to see a just economy for their communities. I am gonna let folks keep filling that form out. It looks like about 75% of y'all have filled it out. We are looking for 100% participation. So if you could go ahead and vote on that and share what kind of organization you're working with, and feel free, if you feel like your organization is not captured well there, check other and tell us where you work and how you would describe your work, because we know there's a lot of different types of folks and a lot of different types of institutions that are here with us today. So, and with that, I think, let's see, I think we're pretty close to, oh, there we go. We are done. Yeah. So just to highlight for y'all before I turn it over to Cornell and Bethany, we do have a particularly large number of folks that are representing housing counseling agencies today. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of folks who looked at this list and said, hey, I fall someplace else. We have a number of CDCs and other faith-based organizations, social services providers. Yeah, so it's good to be with y'all, and excited to share more with y'all throughout this afternoon. So Cornell and Bethany, if I can turn it over to y'all, and we'll start with you, Cornell. If you could share your organization, how long you've been an NCRC member, and I will say both Cornell and Bethany sit on NCRC's board of directors. And so if you could also share just how you heard about NCRC and became a member, that'd be great. So Cornell, we'll start with you.
So good morning, everyone. I hope my audio is okay. Having some internet issues this morning or this afternoon. Cornell Cruz Jr., Community Reinvestment Alliance of South Florida. We are a nonprofit membership organization here in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. Come the 1st of September, we will be becoming a statewide organization. So we are partnered with the NCRC and doing some of the great work that NCRC does. I've been involved with NCRC since 2011, approximately. Our organization was founded and started by Arden Shank. Most of you that are here from South Florida know Arden very well. Arden founded our organization in 2015, based on he is a board member of NCRC, and John Taylor had been asking him to start an organization, a like organization here in South Florida for many years. He finally acquiesced and started the organization. I have been to the last 6 NCRC conferences, including our virtual conference that we did this year. It is a great experience. We always have it in Washington, D.C. We learn a lot, have some great national speakers, and the organization has done quite a bit, from negotiating community benefits agreements with financial institutions to leading the way in legislation as well as advocacy for the Community Reinvestment Act. I would advise you, if you don't think the Reinvestment Act touches you, I will use a phrase a friend of mine used to say all the time: you're living under a serious misconception. The Community Reinvestment Act touches each and every one of our organizations and is a big part of how you serve your clients and serve your communities. And NCRC leads the way. So I'm grateful to be a part of it and be a partner, and just recently elected to the board of directors. So thank you, Katie, for putting this together, and I look forward to speaking later on.
And Bethany, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Katie. Bethany Sanchez. I direct the Fair Lending Program at the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. I don't know how I got connected with NCRC originally, maybe through Jim Bleisner. It certainly was when I was in San Diego, and Jim Bleisner ran the Reinvestment Task Force there. And that's how I learned more about CRA and how working directly with banks and getting benefit agreements was important. So I guess that must have been it. And then when I moved to Milwaukee, I immediately and started working at the Fair Housing Council 20 years ago. I immediately, got the Fair Housing Council to become a member, and it wasn't too long after that. Well, I guess it was a couple of years after that I was asked to consider joining the NCRC board, and. The benefits are everything that Cornell describes and more in terms of, well, I think we'll be getting into a little bit more detail on most of that in the rest of our sessions. So I'll maybe just leave it there.
Thanks, Bethany.
All right, from here, we're going to talk a little bit give a little context about NCRC and its history. So I'm just going to share the slides if you give me a second. Can everybody see that? Great. So for background, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition is a group of grassroots members organizations that was founded back in 1990 with the goal of promoting economic rights, mainly through the tool of the Community Reinvestment Act. For those who are here and not very familiar with what we call the CRA, this was an act that was targeting, addressing the issue of redlining by financial institutions in their local geographies. So the NCRC and its member organizations strive to use CRA as a tool to invigorate investment in these local communities that have these financial banking institutions. And the ways that we do that is through advocacy, research, conferences, webinars. You can see a little bit more here. We're going to go into more detail about how these membership benefits and how this work goes about by talking a little bit with Bethany and Cornell, and then Maurice and I will highlight some specific benefits as well. You can also see here the different types of organizations that are part of the coalition, with which Katie covered a little bit earlier, everything from housing, counseling agencies to CDCs to local faith-based institutions and more. And before we swing it back to our members, just a brief overview on how membership works. We go with a tiered annual due style. So it's based on both your organization type as well as your annual budget size. So eligible organizations include nonprofits, state and local government agencies, and educational institutions. And you can see the exact annual dues there. If you're a part of an organization that is not eligible for NCRC membership, or you're an individual who whose organization has chosen not to join NCRC just yet, we also have the Just Economy Club option for folks. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation, but you can choose to be a monthly, annual, or one-time donor and get membership benefits that way, though not to the same extent as if you were part of an organizational membership. And we'll share this again at the end, as well as contact info if you have any further questions about these. All right, and I'm going to turn it back over now to Maurice.
Thank you, Maggie. So now we're going to have a little chat with Bethany and Cornell and talk through how they use some of the member benefits, starting with CRA advocacy and community benefits agreements. So one of the ways NCRC protects CRA is by working with our members on campaigns to sign community benefits agreements that detail how a bank will meet its CRA requirements going forward. Since 2016, NCRC has facilitated community benefits agreements with 15 bank groups worth a combined $338 billion for lending, investments, and philanthropy. But our broader goal really is to help our members understand and use CRA and other policy and advocacy tools and resources so that they can increase investment in their communities. So I'd like to ask both of you, Bethany and Cornell, about how you've engaged with our CRA advocacy work and CBAs and how it's helped your work at your organizations. Bethany, let's start with you. Oh, and Bethany, you are muted.
Sorry. I would say that more than any other organization, NCRC is at the forefront of helping people understand what CRA is, what the power of it, how it can help the people that we serve. And it's at the forefront of working to strengthen it and to push back on harmful attempts to weaken it. And speaking of harmful attempts to weaken it, I just have to say kudos to everybody that's involved with CRA, well, with CRA certainly. What I meant to say was with NCRC. NCRC has been also the leader on treasuring, helping people to understand why it's a treasure. The CRA treasure, the Treasure CRA toolkit has been immensely helpful in helping us push back on the harmful ways that the OCC had previously proposed to change CRA, and they actually had implemented their recommendations. And with our pushback and the concern from the other regulatory agencies, the FDIC and the Fed in particular, they have now changed their minds. And if you saw your emails today, it's official that the OCC is scrapping their former plan for really gutting CRA, and they're going to start over and work with the other regulatory bodies, which is what NCRC and its allies across the country had been advocating for a couple of years now. So congrats to everyone, to all of us, really. The policy alerts and the newsletters are super useful so that we can understand, CRA itself is a small, the language in the actual legislation is not very long, but the regulations are, and sometimes it can feel pretty arcane, and NCRC makes it understandable. NCRC breaks it down for us and helps us understand the importance of each of the different factors and how things come together, and how that and the main thing, how that impacts the people that we serve in our communities on the ground. It helps us to understand where the opportunities are to advocate or to oppose, those bad regulations, or to advocate for strengthening regulations, and like, for example, we're now talking about explicitly addressing race within the regulations, so that's a very explicit thing that they look at when they're evaluating the bank's performance. The leg reg calls, the legislative reg, we call it leg reg for short, legislative and regulatory committee is open to all NCRC members, and it happens every month. And I really encourage existing members to get on it and learn about the issues that are coming up in the legislative and regulatory arena. And even just the agenda for that meeting, that monthly meeting itself, is helpful, because Jaron and Joe and their team give hot links to the different issues and the different perspectives and the different comment letters that NCRC has submitted, or that others have submitted. And it's just a wealth of information that really flows back to CRA and all of the fair lending and just economy work that we do.
Thank you, Bethany. Cornell, can you share a little bit about the CRA advocacy work you've engaged in with NCRC?
Yes, and thank you. With the NCRC, I want to reiterate what Bethany said. One great thing about being a member is being a part of the legislative calls that we have. As a matter of fact, Bethany and I were just on one yesterday afternoon, and we talk about all the legislative items that come up that affect not only the Community Reinvestment Act, but the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, housing, affordable housing, small business side. We get to address all those items and how we're going to either influence legislation, try to talk about legislation, try to change legislation, and maybe reinvent it if possible. So it's being a big part of NCRC that gives us our voice in Washington, D.C., and NCRC keeps their finger on the pulse of what's going on that affect these items in our country. I've participated in the short time that I've been a part of NCRC and the executive director of this organization. We participated in 6 community benefits agreements. And these community benefits agreements had to do with financial institutions who had purchased banks either in our area and other states' area and other parts of the country. And NCRC has negotiated, as she stated, over $300 billion, I believe it was, and that's billion with a B, in community benefits agreements. And the great thing about it is we don't get to do this in a vacuum. We actually get to sit down as states or as regions and actually talk to the bank's presidents and talk about what's needed in our particular area. For instance, in South Florida, I always talk about climate change and climate gentrification, sea level rise, because we're ground zero especially for North America. We're ground zero for that point. And getting the banks to understand how much is, what's needed as far as their investment or reinvestment in order to help the residents, and as well as the people who work for their particular banks, how to help them survive in our particular areas. It has been a very how can I say it? It's been a very great experience in learning how this works and getting the banks to reinvest up more above and beyond what they would normally do in their communities as they purchase these smaller banks or medium-sized banks to make themselves even larger. I think the last two we've done, Bethany, one has become the 6th largest bank in the country. The other one has become the 7th largest bank in the country, and they're in less than 15 states, both of them. So that means that they got a lot of people, right? So we being a part of that and being able to discuss what the needs in our states, discuss the overall needs, and being able to criticize as well, because it's not, we don't just sit there and have kisses and hugs. We actually criticize, we actually bring forth problems and issues that we think the bank should be more involved in. So from the community benefits agreement side, it's been NCRC has done some great strides, and I like to add research. The things that I can ask for from the NCRC research department is you would think would be unbelievable. Their research department is just crazy. I don't know how they get it, but they get it. You can actually go on in, be an NCR member, go to the research department and ask how many banks, the number of banks that are in a particular area, and get that information from them. They can actually tell you how banks are loaning in a particular area, whether small business or affordable housing. All those items that we can request is so great, being able to do that research, and that research comes in key as you write grants, because you want to give as much information as possible, right? Especially when it's concerning a particular item that you want to help. So we are, I think the NCRC and its member organizations are doing a great job in trying to bring Community Reinvestment Act to the forefront. A lot of people don't know it, especially government officials don't know how important the Community Reinvestment Act is and how it can affect their constituency and the people who government are trying to serve. So I love that bridge between NCRC and the legislative branch, as well as local and state and federal governments.
Thank you, Cornell. Yeah, and we can talk a little bit more about research shortly. We have so much to cover, so I'm going to keep us moving through our agenda this afternoon. The next thing I'd like to ask y'all about is the conference. Cornell, you mentioned at the beginning, I think you've been to 6 conferences. So I'd like you to share a little bit about that, just a little bit of background. We have our conference every spring in Washington, D.C. Of course, this year it was virtual. But we did like 2 weeks of conference content and then an advocacy week, which usually when we're gathering in person is a Hill Day. So yeah, Cornell, if you could share about your conference experience and advocacy day.
Oh, the conference experience is something that you can't forget. You get to come to DC, our nation's capital. You get to enjoy all the great speakers that they have. NCRC's clout is humongous, and so we get to. I've heard Sherrod Brown speak. I've heard and see Sherrod Brown. I've heard and see and Senator Sherrod Brown and several of the other senators and legislators up on the Hill all speak about the importance of the Community Reinvestment Act. Elizabeth Warren. So there's going to the conference is an experience that you can't forget. They cover a wide gambit of different subjects. It's the whole week. I usually go up on Sunday and come home Friday night. When we do have it in DC, we have what's called Hill Day. Hill Day, we go up on the Hill, start going up on the Hill about 8:30 in the morning, and we stay on the Hill all day. And we go to our different states legislators, both on the Senate side as well as the representative side, and talk to the representatives about issues that are germane to our particular states as well as to NCRC as a whole. So we get to spend all day on the Hill. It's a great time. If you've never walked the Capitol complex, wear comfortable shoes, because you're going to be on both sides of the complex as well as the main hall. So it's an experience, especially if you've never been there and you've never seen it. If you've never had a chance to talk to the legislators, we this year I got the honor of being asked to lead the Florida delegation, even though we did it virtually. NCRC's clout is so used that people take that phone call, no matter whether they're Republican or Democrat. They take that phone call, and we get to go in and we get to speak. So it is something that you cannot miss, and something that you learn so much from, and you get to take back. I've used the same tactics when I go to Tallahassee, our state capital, and talk to those legislators as well. So it is a learning experience that you got to go at least once. You got to go at least once.
And if you go at least once, you'll be back every year after, if you possibly can, because it's such a positive experience. One of the things that I love is looking at new participants that come with me every year, at their faces when they first walk into the room, and see, the diversity of people that are there, and the number of people that are there, and the energy in the room. And I'd say to a person, they're they're blown away. It's a fabulous experience. It's exciting. The keynote speakers are top notch. I'd say that for me, one of the highlights for all my years of going to NCRC conferences have been the two keynotes from Dr. Reverend William Barber II. He brought tears to my eyes multiple times during his comments, and people were on their feet cheering multiple times while he was speaking. It was just so powerful and so right on target and so energizing and inspiring. Getting emotional talking about that. When I got home, I couldn't wait for the video to come out, and I sent it to all of my friends, whether or not they were involved in the kind of work that I do. It was just that powerful. The other thing that I would say is just, so the keynotes are great. The workshops are a lovely wide variety of issues and experience levels. So there's something for everyone, with for experts that have been doing stuff for a number of years, down to people who are beginners, and everything in between. And those are important too, certainly. Any conference needs that. The other thing that's really valuable for me about the conference is just the networking, the interactions in the hallway before and after sessions. And I have to say the social things at night, the receptions, the meals, the just, letting down a little bit, letting your hair down, and just, having personal conversations with people and getting to know people a little bit more on a personal level, both the delegation that you or not delegation, but with the people that you come with from your state or from your city, but also the people, other people in the room from other states and cities across the country. And one particular memory about the conference and one of those fun times was the last one that we had. So it was spring of 2019. They hired a band, and at one of the social events, so it was a full-on meal, full-on buffet, carving stations and beverages, adult and otherwise, and an amazing band, and people were dancing and just, and no compunction to dance, but it, you can watch, and it was just a lot of fun. So it's fun, it's inspiring, it's certainly educational, and it gives you a lot of great tips for how you can do your work better when you go back home.
Well, thank you, Bethany. The conference, yeah, definitely sounds like a great time. One other thing, if you can share a little bit briefly, in addition to our conferences, we do regional summits, which are usually once a year. And I know in 2018, there was one in Wisconsin. Could you just take a few minutes to share about that?
Sure. In 2018, June of 2018, 300 people gathered for a day of a reinvestment summit here in Milwaukee. Workshops, keynotes, and the networking all came together to help people to pique their interest and their commitment for those who were already interested in working together to support CRA and to work for a just economy and racial justice, economic justice, and all of the things that we all work for, and to support each other in our work. Not all of us work in all of those categories, but we can support each other. And the benefit of that reinvestment summit for us was twofold. One was leading up to the summit, we had a lot of good communications and people that signed on to help sponsor it, and the nonprofits that work to help people in their circles understand why it would be good to come to the summit, and what they could get for it. And in those conversations, it helped strengthen our relationships among us. And then afterward, it fired up a whole lot of new people. And in fact, just this year, I got in contact with someone who had attended the summit that I still have not met in person, but she's been getting the emails ever since, and she's engaged. And so there's lots of benefits that come, and you don't always know where they're going to come from, but they're really valuable for the communities where they take place.
Thank you. So yeah, lots of great opportunities to engage and meet other folks through the conference and the summits. I want to go back now to something Cornell started to talk a little bit about earlier, and that's our research team and the research benefits that members have. So at NCRC, we believe data drives the struggle for economic justice. We have an amazing research team that puts out different publications. Their work has been mentioned by the Washington Post and New York Times and other outlets. You can see all of their publications on our website. An example of a recent one that they did was on small business and bank branch locations. So, there is the publications are available publicly, but also they can work with our members individually and help them with research as they meet stakeholders in their communities. So Cornell, sounded like you've used the research. Can you share an example of the research you've used and how it's helped you? Let's see. I'm not sure. Cornell may be frozen. Is anyone else seeing that?
Yeah, I don't see him.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for Cornell to come back, Bethany, could you share about the research that you've used?
Sure. So up until about 3 years ago, we relied exclusively on NCRC's research on lending issues, looking at the HMDA data and helping us to analyze it, and providing information on small business lending as well. And that informed our comment letters, and it informed our work with the regulators when the banks were undergoing performance evaluations for their performance under the Community Reinvestment Act. we would interact with, and still do, interact with the regulators, let them know what we saw in terms of what they're doing well, if they're doing something well and some things well, hopefully it's multiple, not always though, and where there's room for opportunity, and there's always room for opportunity, but you know, when there's really stark concerns, HMDA data really helps us to highlight that and to hopefully take it to the next level in terms of scrutiny and addressing those concerns. And when one benefit of that is, and kind of takes me back to the community benefit discussion, is that there was a bank that's based in Wisconsin. It has branches in other states as well, but it's not really well known across the country. That was our, you know, I wanted to point out in terms of working those community benefits agreements. It doesn't have to be a super large bank in order for it to have an impact. I'll just name the bank. It was Associated Bank, and the lending data and the research that we were able to get showed that Associated Bank, it appeared, was redlining, and a complaint was filed against with HUD against Associated Bank for redlining on home loans. Well, that complaint worked its way through the process, and in the meantime, we were working with Associated Bank on the ground in Milwaukee and across Wisconsin, and then they settled on that, but we still were concerned that they then went about buying another bank, another pretty big bank that was based in terms of its size in Wisconsin. And so we needed to make sure that if this was going to go through, that, you know, a lot more work was going to have to be done in terms of their fair lending. And I will say that it was successful. So Associated Bank's home purchase loans to non-white borrowers went from 30 originations in 2013 when the complaint was filed to 220 in 2019. And that 220 originations of home purchase loans to non-white borrowers in the city of Milwaukee put them at #1 in terms of market share. So compared to all their peers, no matter the size, they were #1. And so that was a success in terms of the research and in terms of the community benefits agreement that we were able to negotiate, that NCRC led the way on and brought us all together and brought the bank to the table.
Thank you, Bethany, for that very practical experience about how research, you know, helped with that community benefits agreement. Cornell, I saw you nodding as Bethany was speaking, so I'd like you to share a little bit about how you've used the research benefit.
Yeah, and thank you. I agree with Bethany. We had a similar situation here in South Florida. It was the very first community benefits agreement I was involved in, and we had a similar situation where a bank was not loaning to African American borrowers, and the research department was able to provide us with those specific numbers and the HMDA data so that we could actually file a complaint and get a change in that. And I'd like to mention something else about the research department. I don't know if you remember, Bethany, a few years ago, we were in the middle of the NCRC conference, and we got wind that one of the big 4 banks who had several problems then, and still has problems today. We got wind as we were walking around the conference. It was all over the halls that one of the big 4 banks was getting a higher grade on their exam than they should have gotten after all the complaining and stuff that we had done as an organization, as several organizations, or as NCRC. And the research department made sure that got out to everyone. I think we had maybe 900 folks at that event that year, And we were actually able to make comments and make complaints while we're at the conference in order to help get that score lowered and bring it down we didn't get exactly what we wanted, but it did come down from being an outstanding to a lower grade. So the research department was instrumental in getting that information out during that conference. As I stated, we were in the middle of the conference. We were there in DC, and this was phenomenal that all that information was able to get out. They knew that what was going on with this bank being with the regulation exam grade, and we were able to fight to get it lowered, even though we didn't get exactly what we want. Baby steps. So the research department, I've actually gone to DC and met with the research department as we discussed the things that I'd like to hear about here and the things that affect my area, and now even more so as we move statewide. And as I move into the different cities and municipalities and MSAs, I'm going to be able to request that information and find out exactly what a bank is doing in a particular MSA that's outside of my own at this particular time. So the research department is phenomenal. I don't care how they do it. I don't care what strings they pull. I just love that I'm able to push a button and they're able to give it to me. That's what I love.
Thank you, Cornell. So in a moment, Maggie's going to, give us a quick tour of the website and talk about some of the other benefits, but I see we have some questions coming in. So I'm going to hand it over to Katie to answer those, and then she may bounce some between Bethany and Cornell.
Yeah, thanks, Maurice. And these are really great questions. And I'm going to do my best, but also try to be respectful of time. And so, Maurice, yell at me if I'm spending too much time on these. Pastor Norris, I think we covered some of the questions that you were asking around what kind of data NCRC makes available. I am going to ask if you have follow-up questions, if you'll follow up with us, and we also should share the Fair Lending Report tool link here. Rosalind, I'm going to answer this question the way I think that you meant it, and then if that's not the case, tell me that I got it wrong. So, CRA is a great tool, but it is not a perfect tool. So for example, one of the things that NCRC has been fighting with our members is to have more emphasis on race in CRA, and that's part of the reform that we're looking for. If you're looking for kind of like, how do I make sure that, my community's experiences and the needs that my community has, are taken into account as we think about how CRA as a legislative piece, as a regulatory, implication is done. I would say the LegReg calls that Bethany mentioned are a really great organic way to kind of, be a part of every step of the process to, say, here's a thing that I'm seeing. Our policy shop is also really good about kind of giving folks a heads up about, here's where we are in the campaign, here's some opportunities for you to weigh in, here's where we need stories and experiences, and for folks to weigh in and share that community perspective to make sure that the recommendations and the pushing that NCRC does is actually responsive to community needs. So that may answer your question, but Rosalind, circle back if that didn't do it for you. There was also a question about kind of, is that fair lending tool and the technical assistance support that NCRC could provide, could that be cheaper than hiring an outside consultant? Very likely. I will say, so the Fair Lending Report tool is free for members. It's very comprehensive. What we found is that it answers about 90% of the type of research related questions that we get from members. And so we're really excited for folks to be able to kind of, explore that and, see how far they can get. If there's more technical assistance, if there's more specialized research that you're looking for, that's a conversation with our research team. And kind of the way we do that is, if it's something that's really easy and makes sense and it's in our wheelhouse, frequently our research team will just do it. And that's a benefit to you as a member. Sometimes there are more complicated projects that we want to do with our members, and so we work with them on, what's a fair price for that. That is probably still going to be significantly cheaper than you'd find out on the market, but that also, allows our staff to, keep the staffing that they have, providing the strong value for our members. So, let's have a conversation. I will also say, Todd, I believe you're in Albany. We do have a number of members out your way that are very experienced at using our research tools for that kind of coalition work that you are referencing. And so if you're not already connected to them, Maggie would be thrilled to connect you. I hope one of the themes that you're hearing is that really, like, some of the strongest value of being an NCRC member is not actually what we as staff can do for you, but the NCRC family and the peer-to-peer connections that we can help facilitate for you guys. So really happy to do that. Sandy, you've got some really challenging questions about these CBAs. I am going to link to a CBA kind of explainer for those of y'all who are going, wait, what is this? And what billions of dollars are we talking about? But how do NCRC members get, their piece of the pie, particularly when you've been around the table and you've helped us to negotiate these, is something that I'll just be frank and say we are still working on that. And there's a number of strategies that we're experimenting with. I will say that, when we talk about the billions of dollars that are committed, it's not necessarily, all of these agreements have a portion that is philanthropy that should be going, as grant making to community organizations. A lot of it are commitments in lending, committing housing loans, small business loans. And I think it's important to remember that. But it is something that we're trying to figure out too, including, does it make sense for NCRC to take some of that CBA money and figure out how to distribute it ourselves to our members to make sure that we can do that through an equity lens, as Sandy referenced. And that's something that we are just starting to dabble with, trying to figure out the staffing and the capacity that we need to do that and do that well. So that's, those are really good questions. I wish I had a, clean cut, here we go. But it is something that we think about a lot, that we care about a lot, and that we're working on having conversations with our members and with our banks. And I'll pause there and just give Cornell and Bethany a chance to add on to any of those, because I do think that y'all have some really good perspective on some of these questions.
Well, I just put mine in the chat, but I'll just say yes, indeed, most of the dollars, I mean, the 339 or whatever billion dollars that's been committed is obviously a significant number. And the bulk of that is commitments to lending to low and moderate income people and on home loans and small business loans and investments in low and moderate income communities. And that's the benefit for our organizations, is that our community is made better, that the people that we serve are going to have access to home loans, and that they're going to have a better understanding of the products. They're going to have access to subsidized affordable housing that was subsidized and financed in part by those banks that prior to CRA never got involved in that kind of an activity. Their housing counseling agencies are typically, or at least our experience in Milwaukee, and I'm pretty sure it's the experience across the country, is that the housing counseling agencies are now getting funding from the banks, whereas prior to CRA that never happened.
All right. I'm going to, oh, sorry, go ahead, Cornell.
I'd like to add something, please. I see exactly what Sandy's saying, and I'm very glad she asked this question. And as a person who loves to stir stuff up, And being a new member of the NCRC board, I do plan to bring this subject up. I think this has to be in the negotiation process, especially along the lines of philanthropy. What Bethany said is very, very true. When we do these community benefits agreements, it's more general towards them investing in loans and lending and things of that nature. But we also talk about the philanthropy side. And on the philanthropy side, we gotta, let me just be frank, we gotta get better in the negotiations about who we talk to, getting the names of the people who we talk to in each MSA, in each service area, who are the contacts for that particular bank, and getting the smaller organizations more involved in getting some of that money that the banks either sponsor or grant or just generally invest in. I think we have to get better at that. It's a learning process. I will guarantee you this, and I will say this to you. As I stated, I participated in 6 of them, and each one has gotten better and better and better and better. So I agree with you, Sandy. We gotta work on ways to get when we negotiate the community benefits agreements, that the banks, be able to say, okay, I'm not just going to write checks to the big brothers and big sisters of the world and the United Ways of the world. We need to get grassroots organizations who are down in the dust doing that work as well. They need to be made whole as well. They need to know who to talk to, who is their point of contact in each MSA. Those are the things that I'm looking to, and I've already mentioned these things to Jesse, looking at how we can do better. Because I feel your frustration. I'm a small organization myself. I feel your frustration. We just got to get better in how we negotiate and how we leverage our power when we start talking for these community benefits agreements. And I can guarantee you it will get better. I guarantee you, Sandy, it will get better. We'll just continue to work on it. And I know it's easy to say be patient. Believe me, I get that. But I stated as a new board member, I get to raise a lot of hell now that I didn't get to raise before. So Sandy, I feel you. So look for some changes in the near future, because I mean, we can't say okay, as Jerry said, but the money's gone. So no, it's not gone. When we go in these community benefits agreements, we do them for long term. We do them the shortest we've had, Bethany, is 3 years, right? Yeah. We go anywhere from 3. The longest we've had I've seen is 6 years. So, we can continue to keep going back and continue to keep pounding them and continue to keep saying, okay, look, we need you not just to help for the big organizations, the small organizations that are busting their butt down there doing the work in their neighborhoods. They need your help as well, and we want to know how that money is being spent as far as you're concerned. Just like, for instance, I will bring up something else. At the end of last summer, how many banks did you guys see that we're giving $100 billion now because we want to social change, and we want to invest in social change? Okay, cool. But I want to know where that money's going, because I don't want you to come 5 years from now come in and say, well, we had the money out there, but nobody applied. Well, nobody applied because nobody knew where to go to apply. So those are the things that we have to keep working on, and we have to keep changing. But Sandy, I feel you. Granted, please understand, I'm going to work hard and try to see with along the NCRC, as their staff works very, very hard in order to try to get these things done. Yeah. Sorry for the.
No, it was good. You were right on. And we are almost at time, believe it or not. So I think we're going to go back to Maggie to run through a few quick things. If you feel like your questions didn't get fully answered, and some of these, I will say, some of these, as Cornell's saying, we don't have answers for them yet. We're committed to work for the long term to answer them, but do feel free to follow up with us afterwards, and we'll, happy to have a deeper conversation about some of these.
Thanks, Katie. So like Katie said, we're running a little bit out of time, but what I'm going to do next is try to run through a bit of the membership benefits besides the CBAs by sharing my screen and kind of going through the website where you can go yourself later on to read a little bit more about the membership benefits. So y'all should see the NCRC homepage now. And I wanted to start with our training academy. So programs, training academy, what we call NTA. These folks provide a lot of trainings on housing counseling and lately capacity building for nonprofits as well. So anything from grant writing to how to build out your board of directors to storytelling and fundraising. You can see upcoming trainings right here. There's a long list of modules that you can sign up for. Currently, all of these trainings are free, no cost, and they're all online. Before the pandemic, we also had in-person trainings around the country. And if you're a member right now, you can also reach out to the contacts at NTA, which we're going to share at the end of this presentation, and see if they can work with you to create a training based on these topics specifically for your organization or your constituents. And that's an option that folks have taken in the past and involves us possibly traveling to your area to host this training and workshop. So if you have not had a chance to attend any of these trainings in the past, you would need to set up a separate visitor registration right here. And just a note, this is different than the login you use to take care of your NCRC membership account. So just to make sure that you do that before you sign up. And again, these are all free currently because of the pandemic, but that will not be the case long-term. So moving really quickly to other events besides the Training Academy, we also have conferences, which Bethany and Cornell talked a little bit about. And today is actually the first day that we've publicly announced the 2022 conference, kind of a save the date here, March 8th through 10th, with the hope that it'll be in person in DC. And as Cornell and Bethany mentioned, that also involves Hill Day, where constituents can go up to the actual Capitol building and talk face-to-face with their representatives in Congress. So you can see a little bit more about the different topics that are usually covered in this event, as well as past speakers to kind of give you a feel about what sorts of topic areas are covered during these conversations. And of course, this is also a great opportunity to meet face-to-face with other coalition members from around the country. Besides the conference, we have the summits, the regional summits that Bethany mentioned, but we also have events that you can find here at upcoming events. So for example, you can see the membership benefits webinar we're in right now. We also do community meetings at request. And then Bethany mentioned the legislative regulatory calls. This is part of the policy and advocacy benefits that membership gets. So every third Wednesday of the month, every second Wednesday of the month, barring any changes at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, you have the opportunity to hop on a call with other coalition members as well as our policy team. And like Bethany said, they will run through movements at the national scale for CRA news, and you'll be able to also ask questions of them for clarity's sake. And they include those live links that Bethany mentioned so that you can go and check that out yourself and hear it from the horse's mouth. You can also join the listserv to get the details about the Ledge Red calls from the member hub, which I'll show in a second. Beyond this, we also have, on the note of policy and advocacy, the Treasure CRA campaign. So if you go back to the homepage, scroll down a bit, we have hashtag Treasure CRA here. And this is a really good place to go if you're looking for resources on how to make use of CRA in your local community. So there's a toolkit down here that includes key messages that you might want to share with representatives in your own locales, graphics, principles for a modern CRA. This is a really good place to get kind of your feet on the ground floor on how to go about making CRA significant in your own communities. So this is a really good place to visit on the website if you get a chance. I also saw that we have a significant amount of housing counseling agencies today on this call. One of the biggest benefits that we offer at NCRC is our housing counseling network. So that's also under programming. Anybody can apply to be a part of our housing counseling network. HCN has been a HUD intermediary since 2008 with an annual cohort that joins every year through this application process right here. Anybody that is accepted, it's a no-cost application, but anyone that is accepted must be a current NCRC members. HCN provides pass-through funding to HCN members to support the housing counseling work as well as technical assistance. There's monthly huddle ups for folks who are part of HCN and open to other individuals as well. And sometimes these include speakers, external speakers about the topic of housing counseling, or study groups for upcoming exams that are on the agenda. So that's a really good opportunity for members as well. And then the last thing I'll add on this is that folks who are part of HCN also receive access to a client management system at no cost for up to 2 users. So folks have really found great use out of that. We also have something called the Racial Economic Equity Team. Right now, they're really focused on research and analysis on lending and community wealth building in communities of color. We can share more information about that at your request. Right now, they're working on studies and getting members involved. So if you're interested in being involved in those studies, we can definitely share more information for you. And then beyond that, we also have affinity groups, including a research group. So Cornell and Bethany mentioned how helpful our research teams are. They also run a Slack channel where you can ask questions of them about certain reports that have come out, HMDA data, and so on. And they're usually very responsive within 24, 48 hours of answering your questions. And we also have a LGBTQ plus affinity group run by our colleague, Karen Colley, who we're also going to share the information at the end for, and she hosts meetings every few months with the focus on challenges of financing in LGBTQ communities. And then the final thing I wanted to show is the member hub, and then I'll throw it back to Maurice to wrap things up. The member hub is a place where members only can sign in and see all of the different reports and research tools in one convenient place. So if you go to membership, member hub, and then sign in, if you are already a member, you can you can use the research tools that we mentioned that we were going to cover in this particular webinar. So everyone has a lot of interest in the fair lending tool, which you can scroll down here, the research, and if you just click 2021 fair lending tool, it should take you here. And you can really learn about the ways that banks are behaving in your particular geography. You can enter by metro, state, or county. And then if you have any questions about how to use the tool, our research team has thoughtfully put together an instruction manual. And like we said, if you're a member, you can also reach out directly to the research team to ask clarification questions or to ask for more customized research. And Jason Richardson, our director of research, can work with you to flesh out your research question a little bit and see what he can do for you. Beyond that, you can sign up for newsletters over here on the top right-hand side, see recent news that has come out, research reports, recorded webinars in the past. This is really useful. Past webinars all live on here behind the paywall to enter the member hub. There's also highlights of other members in the coalition. So you can learn a little bit more about the folks who are also involved in NCRC. And if you'd like to have yourself highlighted here, you can fill out a short form here and we'll reach out to you soon and make sure that you're also featured both here on the hub and on the front facing NCRC page as well. And before I let y'all go, and again, apologies for running over a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that folks know how to add individuals to their account. So right now, if you haven't added team members, the only person that should be able to access the back end of the member hub is the primary contact, which is usually the person who purchased the NCRC membership. If you'd like to make sure that your team members, your staff also have access to the member hub and these research tools, you'll have to go to your subscription and then manage members. And you'll have access to a link here that you can send to your staff, and then they'll have to follow up on their own end and set up an account. But that'll make sure that they can go and access the Fair Lending tool and other webinars and other tools on the member hub on their own instead of all sharing one membership. This is also the place that you would go in order to make sure you have auto renewal turned on, when your next renewal date is, as well as adding a credit card if that's the way you choose to pay for your NCRC membership. I know that I mentioned that I would go over the Just Economy Club. We're running a little bit out of time, so what I'll do is just share the link here in the chat. If you go there, it'll give you a little bit more detail about the Just Economy Club, where you can become an individual member if your organization is not eligible or not part of NCRC yet. This is a great option for folks who want to make sure that they have access to those newsletters, though we will flag that you cannot participate in CBAs, for example, if you're an individual member. That's a reservation for organizational members. I'm happy to answer any questions now or at my email address at membership@ncrc.org, but I will hand it over to Maurice now to wrap things up.
All right, yeah, we definitely need to wrap up. There's been some great conversation and great questions today. I want to thank all of you for joining us and thank Bethany and Cornell for taking their time to share about their member experience. So as we close, if each of you could share one piece of advice that you would like to leave our attendees with. And Cornell, when you share your advice, I'd also invite you to share a little bit about the joint membership opportunity we have for members in Florida. So Bethany, why don't we start with you and then move to Cornell?
Thanks. I would say read the emails. It makes sure that the emails are chock full of really helpful information on cutting edge issues and opportunities to engage that will make a difference for the people that you serve and for your organization itself. So, try and stay on top of what's being offered and use it.
Right, Cornell.
I'd like to say that, no organization is perfect. And the more we have things like this, the better, and people making suggestions and comments, is the better we will be as an organization. And thank you, Katie and Maurice, who, for those of you who don't know, Maurice is leaving. We hate to see you go. Maurice is leaving. And Maggie, thank you so much for your hard work in doing this. I hope we can do this, a couple of times a year so we can inform folks. We're in a partnership with NCRC for joint membership. So if you're in Florida and you're trying to figure out, join NCRC or maybe join the Community Reinvestment Alliance of South Florida, soon to be Community Reinvestment Alliance of Florida, you can actually do a joint membership where you get the benefits of both worlds. Well, I get the yell and scream for the state of Florida, and we get to do stuff nationwide and work with the other organizations like Bethany's great organization up in Milwaukee, and we get to set some precedents and set some policies and procedures for as we go forward nationwide. Again, I just want to say no organization is perfect. All of you are needed. All your comments are needed. This is how we get things done and how we change things, good and bad, so we can make sure that everybody's involved. It's an evolution. It's evolving constantly. So please don't get wrapped around the axle about, well, things have been the same for the last few years and nothing has changed. Yes, it has. A lot of things have changed from what I've seen, but everything has to be explored, and this is how we get there. So I look forward to participating in the future. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you again, Cornell and Bethany. So real quick, a couple of last minute things. Maggie, showed you where you can add team members. If you're a current member, please add your team members. If you haven't joined yet, we hope you will decide to join us today. If we can go to the next slide, we have this is a save the date slide. As Cornell and Bethany shared, we have our conference hopefully in DC this year. So we hope you will be able to join us and meet in person. And let's see if we can go to the next slide. I think, yep, this is the slide with all the contact information, but we'll follow up with everyone after this webinar with a recording for today's webinar, as well as who you can contact with any questions. So I think that is all. Thanks everyone for taking time to join us today. Please stay connected to us, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.